There was a time when being human did not mean what it means today. If you had been born 50,000 years ago, somewhere on this planet another human might have been breathing at the exact same moment as you. Not another tribe, not another culture, not another country, another human, a different kind of human, one with a different body, a different face, a different evolutionary story. And today every one of them is gone, every single one, except us. That sounds like a victory until you look closer, because the strongest didn't survive, the oldest didn't survive, the most cold adapted didn't survive, the species that lasted the longest didn't survive. So why are we here? What happened to everyone else? Most people imagine evolution as a ladder, one species replacing another until the best version finally appeared. But evolution doesn't work like that. Evolution is a tree, and for most of human history, that tree had many branches. Then, one by one, they disappeared. The first branch we need to talk about is Homo erectus. And Homo erectus creates a problem, because if survival belonged to the species that lasted the longest, we should not be standing here today. Homo erectus appeared nearly 2 million years ago, long before civilization, long before agriculture, long before anything we would recognize as human society. Their bodies already looked surprisingly modern. Long legs, shorter arms, a body built for movement, a body designed to cover enormous distances across open landscapes. They became one of the first human species to leave Africa. They spread into Asia, survived changing climates, adapted to different environments, and they kept surviving for over 1 million years. Think about that for a moment. Modern humans have existed for roughly 300,000 years. Homo erectus survived more than 3 times longer than our entire species has existed so far. If longevity were the measure of success, they won. Yet the last known Homo erectus fossils from Java are dated to roughly 110,000 years ago. After more than 1 million years of survival, they vanished. Not because they suddenly became weak, not because they forgot how to survive. The world around them changed. Habitats shifted, rivers moved, forests expanded and disappeared. Populations became isolated. Resources became less predictable, and eventually, one of the most successful human species in history simply faded away, which teaches a lesson most species never want to hear. Surviving for a long time does not mean surviving forever. But if Homo erectus was impressive, the next species may have been even more remarkable: the Neanderthals. And almost everything people think they know about them is wrong. For decades, they were portrayed as primitive cave dwellers, half human, half animal, a failed version of us. That image has collapsed. Neanderthals were specialists. Their bodies were built for a world most modern humans would struggle to survive. They were shorter and more powerful than we are. Wide chests, dense bones, massive muscles, large noses that may have helped warm freezing air before it reached the lungs. Everything about them looked engineered for Ice Age Europe. They hunted giant animals at close range. Not with rifles, not from a safe distance, face to face. Many Neanderthal skeletons carry injuries that researchers have compared to those seen in modern rodeo riders. The kind of injuries that happen when a massive animal decides it doesn't want to become dinner, yet they survived. For hundreds of thousands of years, they used fire, created sophisticated tools, likely cared for injured group members, used pigments, possibly created ornaments, possibly told stories around fires just like we do. And then something happened. Not one battle, not one catastrophe, not one dramatic ending. Something slower, something quieter. Little by little, they disappeared. And what scientists discovered next completely changed the story. Because Neanderthals may not be entirely gone. Many people alive today still carry small amounts of Neanderthal DNA. Pieces of them continue to exist inside us, but as a separate human species, they vanished around 40,000 years ago. Why? Probably not for one reason. Neanderthal populations were often small and scattered. Small populations are fragile. A few bad winters, a few failed hunting seasons, a birth rate slightly too low for too long, reduced genetic diversity, a little more isolation, a little less flexibility, and extinction slowly begins to appear. Then climate instability arrived, temperatures shifted, animals migrated, landscapes changed. And into that unstable world came another human species, us. Not necessarily stronger, not necessarily smarter, but perhaps connected in a different way. We'll come back to that. Because the next human species is where the story becomes truly strange. Imagine discovering an entire human species from a finger bone. Not a skull, not a skeleton, a finger. That is how scientists first identified the Denisovans. For years they were almost invisible. A few fragments of bone, a few teeth, a jawbone. Tiny pieces of evidence scattered across Asia. Yet hidden inside those fragments was a completely different human lineage. And despite how little we know about what they looked like, their influence is still alive today. Some modern populations across Asia and Oceania carry Denisovan ancestry. One Denisovan-derived genetic variant helps certain Tibetan populations survive at high altitude, where oxygen levels are dangerously low. Think about that. A vanished human species may still be helping people breathe, even now. And that may be the strangest idea in this entire video. Because the Denisovans remind us that extinction is not always complete. Sometimes fragments remain, not monuments, not cities, not books, just biology. Yet, as a living human species, they disappeared too. The youngest Denisovan remains are roughly 40,000 years old, with some evidence suggesting certain populations may have survived a little longer. Then, they vanished into history. And if you think that's strange, the next species sounds almost impossible. On an Indonesian island called Flores, scientists discovered tiny humans, real tiny humans, adults standing roughly 1 meter tall. At first, researchers thought the fossils belonged to diseased modern humans, but the evidence pointed somewhere far more astonishing. They were their own species, Homo floresiensis, sometimes nicknamed the Hobbits. And they lived in one of the strangest environments ever inhabited by humans, an island populated by giant birds, Komodo dragons, and dwarf elephants called stegodon. Evolution behaves differently on islands. Large animals often become smaller. Small animals sometimes become larger. Scientists call this island dwarfism, and Homo floresiensis may be one of the most extraordinary examples ever discovered. Their fossils date from roughly 100,000 to 60,000 years ago. Stone tools associated with them may have survived until around 50,000 years ago. Then they disappeared. Maybe volcanic eruptions altered their world. Maybe prey populations declined. Maybe environmental conditions changed. Maybe modern humans added pressure. Nobody knows. And that's exactly what makes their story unsettling. A species does not always need a giant catastrophe to vanish. Sometimes all it takes is several small problems arriving at the same time. Which brings us to the question hiding underneath every extinction we've discussed. If strength didn't save the Neanderthals, if longevity didn't save Homo erectus, if adaptation didn't save the Denisovans, if specialization didn't save Homo floresiensis, then what saved us? This is where many people get evolution wrong. Humans did not win because we were perfect. Evolution does not reward perfection. It rewards adaptation. And one of our greatest adaptations may not have been inside the brain itself. It may have been between brains. Homo sapiens seem to have been exceptionally good at creating networks. Ideas traveled farther. Tools spread faster. Knowledge survived the death of individuals. If one group discovered something useful, that information did not remain trapped in one valley. It could spread. If one community struggled, another might help. If one region became unlivable, people could move. The network became stronger than any individual. And when climates became unstable, that mattered a lot. But even that does not tell the entire story. Luck mattered, geography mattered, population size mattered, timing mattered. History is filled with species that did almost everything right and still disappeared, which means the lesson of human evolution is not that the strong survive. The lesson is that survival is never guaranteed. Homo erectus survived for more than 1 million years. Neanderthals conquered Ice Age Europe. Denisovans adapted to some of the harshest environments on Earth. Homo floresiensis survived on an island that looked like another world. Every one of them disappeared. Today, when we say human, we mean Homo sapiens, but only because every other meaning of that word vanished. We are not the top of a ladder. We are the last branch of a tree that used to be crowded with life. And perhaps that should make us feel less superior, not more. Because extinction does not only happen to the weak, it happens to the isolated, the unlucky, the specialized, the outnumbered, the species that cannot adapt fast enough when the world changes around them. And if that is true, then perhaps the most important question is no longer what happened to them. It's what future archaeologists might one day discover about us, if there is anyone left to discover it.